how it started. But obviously, anything, and we saw earlier in the day pictures emerging from inside the mosque itself of confrontations appearing to really enter the building. Those images are part of the issue here, because for Palestinians and for Muslims, for the third holiest shrine in Islam, that is something that is shocking for them to see. And I think that's why there had been these international calls for calm ahead of what was always going to be a very, very tense and difficult day in Jerusalem. And now it has evolved into very serious escalation between militants in Gaza and Israel, with the rockets fired towards Jerusalem, an incredibly rare, very unusual event, that with air raid sirens going off in Jerusalem, and then these airstrikes by the Israelis, and the Palestinian Health Ministry reporting 9 Palestinians killed in that.
Tom, you're going to help us through all the elements of this story. Stay with us, please. This unrest began early on Monday ahead of a planned Jewish nationalist march, and over 300 Palestinians have been injured since. Let me show you some of the videos that have come in through the day. First of all, this is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. For over an hour, police were firing stun grenades and rubber bullets and tear gas towards Palestinians. They in turn threw stones and other objects. This footage was released by Israeli police. These are Israeli security officers during one confrontation. They say thousands of Palestinians had barricaded themselves inside the mosque overnight and were ready with stones and Molotov cocktails in anticipation of a confrontation. Then this video shows police firing tear gas, and we see one wounded man being carried away. We're told 20 police officers were injured, so that is what was happening outside the mosque. And then this was inside. You can hear the chanting inside, but also the confrontation taking place outside. Some videos on social media show stun grenade canisters landing inside the mosque. Then this is the aftermath. As you can see, lots of debris, shoes and broken pieces of glass scattered across the mosque. We also have seen pictures of a burnt carpet and a burnt Quran. The Palestinian Red Crescent says 228 Palestinians have been taken to hospital for treatment, and that 7 are in a critical condition. Well, we've just spoken to Tom live. We'll talk to him live again shortly, but this is how he saw some of these events unfold.
Well, in the compound itself, if you look behind me here, you can see the Dome of the Rock, the mosque with the black roof there to the side. Now, I got here before 9 o'clock local time, and in what had always been feared to be a day of extremely high tensions, things and confrontations were already starting. As I came beneath the walls of the Dome of the Rock here, heavily armed Israeli border police had entered the compound. They were firing volleys of stun grenades at Palestinians on the plaza there, who were throwing stones and other objects at the police. Some of those confrontations then appeared to enter the mosque itself, and over a period, I would say, of 2 to 3 hours, there were then continued clashes. The Israeli border police were trying to push the Palestinians out of the compound, and they did at various points. People were congregating around Lions Gate here, where further stun grenades and water cannon were used against the Palestinians. Some were running through the Muslim graveyards here away from that.
Well, that was inside the old city. There were clashes outside the old city walls too. This video was posted by Israel's foreign ministry, showing the moment an Israeli driver struck a Palestinian after he came under attack. The Al-Aqsa Mosque compound sits inside the old city of Jerusalem. It's sacred to both Jews and Muslims, and has been a frequent flashpoint between Palestinians and Israelis. It's located, as Tom was showing us, on a hilltop complex known by Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, or Noble Sanctuary. It's the 3rd holiest site in Islam, and it's home to the Dome of the Rock. That's where many Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. For Jews, this is known as Temple Mount, and it's regarded as the holiest site in Judaism. It's also the location of the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall as it's called. Well, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called these events today a battle between tolerance and intolerance, between lawless violence and order. He goes on, elements that want to expropriate our rights periodically force us to stand strong, like Israel's police officers are doing. While Palestinians strongly disagree with that description, here's their Prime Minister.
إنني أحمل الحكومة الإسرائيلية
I hold the Israeli government fully responsible for what the worshippers are exposed to in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I warn of the consequences that will result from such incursions, as well as the attempts to evacuate the original owners of the land from their homes.
Well, tensions were building ahead of a rally by Jewish nationalists to mark the anniversary of Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem in 1967. That was during the Israeli-Arab War. The rally was due to take place at 4 p.m. local time. Organisers cancelled it, though some gathered anyway. Here are Jewish nationalists carrying flags outside the old city. Palestinians who claim East Jerusalem as their capital of a future state see the anniversary as a deliberate provocation, while Israel, whose occupation of East Jerusalem is considered illegal under international law, considers the whole city of Jerusalem as its unified capital. So those are the events in Jerusalem. Palestinian officials are also saying 9 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. It's said to be in response to this. This is BBC footage showing smoke from rockets fired towards Israel. Hamas, which is the Palestinian group which controls Gaza, said it fired 7 rockets in response to Israeli aggression. One of them landed 10 kilometres west of central Jerusalem, and this was the damage. Let's hear from the BBC's Tom Bateman again.
We're at Damascus Gate. It's one of the entrances to the Muslim quarter of the Old City. It had been reasonably or relatively calm given the events of earlier in the day as we were here, and then suddenly an air raid siren, which in Jerusalem is an incredibly rare event. We then heard within a moment or two what sounded like the sound of blasts from Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile system, presumably firing down missiles, and I think the expectation's got to be here that these were missiles fired from the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army has confirmed that sirens have been going off in various parts of the country, also outside the Gaza Strip. And as that happened, Palestinians were celebrating as those sirens went off. You can see now the water cannon, the skunk water cannon, moving down the street here, just firing, if we can move the camera there, towards Palestinians. If you look over to the left here, you'll see people running away. This is skunk water. It's a foul-smelling liquid that is fired from these vehicles to try and disperse crowds, people running away. What had happened immediately after that siren and after those interceptions was that dozens of Palestinians came up the steps of Damascus Gate here, many cheering and celebrating what was going on, shouting, "God is great." And that completely changed the mood at that moment. And that's when we've then seen the Israeli forces at this point moving in, trying to push people back.
Now, this escalation has not come out of the blue. The past few days have seen the heaviest clashes in Jerusalem for years. There are 2 events that are the focus of this. This was the Sheikh Jarrah neighbourhood in East Jerusalem on Sunday. Palestinians have been staging protests against legal efforts by Jewish settler groups to evict them from their homes. The lawsuit, which dates back to 1972, argues that the land belongs to the ancestors of Jewish settlers. Palestinians, though, see this as a wider campaign to force them out of parts of East Jerusalem. Then this was also on Sunday. Since the start of Ramadan, clashes have broken out nightly between police and Palestinians who are protesting against security barriers outside Damascus Gate. That's one of the entrances to the old city. Well, Israel's Prime Minister denies a heavy-handed response to these protests. This is what he said on Sunday.
We shall not allow any radical element to undermine the calm in Jerusalem. We shall decisively and responsibly impose law and order in it. We shall continue to keep the freedom of religion for all religions, but we shall not allow violent riots.
While Palestinians deny those charges, there are other factors to consider here too. Let's hear from the BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen.
The conflict is there, it's a given. Mr. Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, in his many years in the job, had come to the conclusion that the conflict could be managed. The one that was a threat to Israel was Iran. So the thing is, though, is that the conflict bubbles on. And in that conflict, Jerusalem is the sharpest part of it all. And all this has happened in Jerusalem, and it's a reminder of the power of the issue that Hamas are now launching rockets out of Gaza. So it happened in Jerusalem, And as you've just heard, it happened, of course, in Ramadan as well, which for Muslims is a highly significant part of the year. So put all together, those sparks were enough to reignite things again. The question now is whether both sides will continue, if you like, honour satisfied, or whether this thing will escalate.
Well, both the US and the European Union are calling for calm. Here's the EU's foreign policy chief.
The situation with regard to the evictions of Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah and other areas of East Jerusalem is a matter of serious concern. I want to repeat what we have already been saying. Such actions are illegal under international humanitarian law and only serve to fuel tensions on the ground.
Well, let's go back to Tom Bateman, who's still live with us. So, Tom, there's a lot of concern being expressed. Are either side doing anything to de-escalate this situation?
Not at the moment. I think we're very much into an escalatory phase of what is happening. And I mean, what you've just set out there, you know, Ross, is extremely comprehensive. And I think it helps people to understand to some extent that there is not just kind of one single cause here. There have been multiple issues that have been playing in and converging together into really, you know, one day today that was always going to be this big question about the degree to which tensions would escalate. And they have done. Now, I think in terms of looking ahead and the potential for things to be calmed, I mean, first of all is what is at the very, very core of the conflict so often, and particularly now, and that is that incredibly sensitive holy site, holy to both faiths, and whether or not things can be calmed there. That will be the first point around the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount. And then, you know, more widely, the way the conflict has erupted and spilled out to some of the theatres we so often see around the Gaza Strip. Now, that's going to be a challenge for everyone involved. And I think, you know, the coming hours are going to be really critical to see how the responses are managed and dealt with as to whether or not things can calm more quickly.
Tom, thanks for your help on this story right through the day.